everyone. On this week's Energy Quick Chat, we speak to Dr. Omar Farouk Ibrahim, the Secretary General, African Petroleum Producers Organisation. Thank you so much for speaking with us on Energy Quick Chat, sir.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Let us begin. In what ways did Barkindo influence the African energy industry?
In very many ways. Barkindo influenced the Nigerian oil and gas industry, the African oil and gas industry, and indeed the global oil and gas industry. Starting from his career in NNPC to the Nigerian liquefied natural gas, then to OPEC, he made great impact on how these institutions that he worked with operated. The last place he worked, as we all know, is the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, based in Vienna, an organization that Barkindo had about over 20-something years working with in various capacities. Barkindo had worked as Nigeria's national representative to the OPEC for 16 years. And in 2006, he was the acting for the Secretary General. In 2009, he became Nigeria's governor to OPEC. And in 2016, he became the substantive Secretary General for 2 terms. Barkindo's tenure as Secretary General of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries will be indelible in the history of not just OPEC, but of the global oil and gas industry. For the simple reason that Barkindo arrived on the scene at a time that the world oil and gas industry was in its most volatile times. And Barkindo, using his administrative acumen, the diplomacy that he learned from his boss, Rilwano Lukman, Barkindo was able to use these experiences to navigate the global oil industry out of the crisis of the 2016-2017 by ensuring that for the first time in the history of the global oil and gas industry, countries outside of OPEC, countries like Russia, Brazil, Mexico, Angola, Oman, and others came to contribute towards the stabilization of the global oil market. Before that time, efforts had been made for several decades to get non-OPEC countries to contribute to the stabilization of the global oil market, but they were not doing it, which took the arrival of Barkindo on the scene and the diplomacy that he deployed, going beyond ministers, in most cases, to heads of state, to get them to give the support of their countries to do this. I can assure you that without Barkindo on the scene in 2016, 2017, the global oil market would have gotten to a situation where what we are seeing today will be a child's play. Because if he had not been able to arrest the volatility in 2017, 2018, the global oil market would have gotten to a point that no matter what investments you come to make later, the industry will not readily recover. So I believe that Barkindo has made an indelible impact on the global oil and gas industry. I may want to quickly mention your The Civil War was on Africa. I think I should also mention to you that the organization I head today, the African Petroleum Producers Organization,
Right.
Barkindo was working with Lukman in the 80s when the very thought of creating APPO, as it was then called,
Okay.
was muted. And I remember late last year, Barkindo led a delegation from OPEC Secretariat in Vienna to my headquarters in Brazzaville. And that was when I really got to know this for the first time. In the reception we gave him, he said, this is the first time he is coming back to Brazzaville after 37 years.
Right.
And I turned around and said, 37 years, what happened 37 years? He said, 37 years ago, we came with Lukman and some other ministers trying to get the support of Congo to be a member of the African Petroleum Producers Organization that we were planning to found.
Yes.
So from day one, he had been a key player in the African oil and gas industry.
Okay, so thank you so much for that illustration. You have succeeded in telling us your views about his work as a global energy leader. So what do you think Barkindo's legacy in energy will be?
I think in Nigeria, in Africa, and globally, he has left indelible legacies. Starting with Nigeria, Barkindo's position as Group Managing Director of the NNPC, although a very short tenure, a little over 1 year, he was able to set a very solid foundation for the reforms and restructuring that NNPC came to have post 2010. Virtually all the major changes that took place after April 2010 were things that he started and lined up to do, because Barkindo is somebody who is always thinking ahead. He doesn't just look at today's problems. He's looking at what are going to come in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And he was preparing NNPC for those challenges when he left office in April 2010. That is with the NNPC, which the industry in general in Nigeria, Barkindo played a key role in the OGIC, which his boss, Dr. Lukman, was the initiator under the Obasanjo administration. As technical assistant to Dr. Lukman, Barkindo played a key role, background of course, in the formulation of the vision of what OGIC is all about.
Right.
There are many people who play key roles, Professor Yinka Omerogbe and others, but Barkindo played a very, very important role. This was long before he became the group managing director, because Obasanjo assigned Dr. Lukman with that responsibility barely 2-3 years after he came to office in about 2002. Barkindo didn't become group managing director of NNPC until 2009. So between that period, between 2002 and 2009, he was playing critical roles that were not seen by many people until he became the group managing director. And as you know, NNPC being the national oil company,
Right.
to a large extent, is a big determiner when it comes to where the industry is going in Nigeria. And he gave that leadership. In Africa, I can assure you that upon assumption of duty as Secretary General of the APPO, one of the first people I contacted was Dr. Barkindo. Barkindo has been a colleague since my early days in OPEC as a head of department and senior member of management. Ran Barkindo as a member of the National Economic Commission Board, which is the national rep. And that was, I think, 2003. And between 2003 and 2007, 2010, we worked together up to the time he became the Secretary General, and I was appointed, and I became the Nigerian governor to OPEC. When I assumed duty as SG of APPO, like I said, one of the first people I contacted was Dr. Barkindo. I said, what can we do together for the African continent?
Right.
APPO cannot go it alone in addressing the challenges of the industry on the continent. Since half of your members are from Africa, I expect you to also give us your attention and let's work together to address the challenges of the industry. We are not going to use the OPEC platform to say we want to solve all the problems of Africa, because OPEC is Africa.
Of course.
So, and on that basis, we established for the first time last summer the Africa OPEC Energy Dialogue. And when we did this, APPO invited AFREC, which is the energy arm of the African Union, and ARNA, the Africa Refiners Distributors Association based in Cote d'Ivoire, to come and constitute what you call the Africa Group. And we went into technical and policy dialogue with OPEC. For example, today we are working on Africa's position on the oil and on the energy transition. And OPEC has been most supportive to us in this project. So he has not only helped Nigeria and Africa, but he has also contributed to the growth of the industry in the world. I had earlier mentioned to you that without him, the Declaration of Cooperation, which brought 11 countries that were not members of OPEC into some form of association that agreed to work together for the stabilization of the oil and gas industry, that couldn't have happened because they have tried in the past and they didn't succeed until Barkindo came on the spot.
So speaking of Africa, sir, do you share the late OPEC chief's view on energy transition timelines for Africa?
Totally. Absolutely. We share a lot with Barkindo when it comes to energy matters. I think I have found in Barkindo a great supporter when it comes to the definition and articulation of the African position on the global energy transition. Both of us believe that the world needs a lot of energy, and the current demonizing of fossil fuels and the support for renewables is not going to help the global community. Because for over 150 years, the world has lived on fossil fuels and all the technological developments you see today, including medicine, including science, information communication technology, can be attributed to energy provided by fossil fuels. Unfortunately, Africa was producing these resources not for its own people, but for other people. And that explains why today, on the African continent, we have the largest proportion of people on earth who do not have access to energy. Women in the villages and even in town cook with firewood, with cow dung, with so many things that are unhealthy. Over 600 million Africans do not have access to electricity. Over 900 million Africans do not have access to any form of modern energy for cooking or domestic use. And on this, both OPEC and APPO are united that we cannot abandon fossil fuels because this is what we have. We have 125 billion barrels of oil in our ground, over 500 trillion cubic feet of gas, and you ask us to abandon it in a hurry? No, we are not in a hurry to abandon it. We are not contesting climate change, but what we are saying is that climate change did not start today. Climate change started 150 years ago. But because the developed world were developing and they wanted to consolidate their development, they refused to do anything until today that they know that their economies are not dependent on heavy energy to succeed. Their economies are today dependent on services and artificial intelligence. They don't rely on manufacturing. This is the time that Africa is going into industrialization. And you can't industrialize with renewable energy, at least not now. So the most reliable form of energy for heavy industries are fossil fuels. And you are telling us, don't use it because it's harmful. But when you were using it for 150 years, even though you knew it was harmful, you hid that knowledge from people. This is something that Barkindo also shares. But because he was heading a global organization, represents from the Americas, from Asia, from Africa, from the Middle East, and situated in Europe, he was not in the best position to say so. I heading an organization that is Africa-centric, based in Africa, whose interest is African people, I can say it because I have no hindrance.
So, what legacies of late Barkindo would the African Petroleum Producers Organization be looking to preserve and pursue?
We will try very much to do what Barkindo has tried to do at the OPEC Secretariat.
Right.
Like I told you, I was OPEC governor for Nigeria for 5 years. And before then, I had also worked at the OPEC Secretariat,
Right.
the key management, senior management, for 7 years. And I can clearly tell you what OPEC was before Barkindo and during Barkindo's time. One of the things I know that he had devoted attention to was research. Barkindo has always believed, including even before he went to OPEC as Secretary General, in NNPC, research and development have always been central to his thinking of how Africa could develop. And this is exactly what we are borrowing from the legacy of Barkindo to ensure that we have established strong research and development centers across the sub-regions of Africa so that our countries who still have oil and gas will be able to continue to exploit these resources in the absence of the international oil companies and international financial institutions that have for about 100 years been sponsoring and doing all of these things for us. Because if the energy transition agenda succeeds and we are not ready to take over the actual operations of this industry, then it means we are going to be left with 125 billion barrels and 500 trillion cubic feet of gas in our ground, because those with the technology would leave us behind, those with the expertise will leave us behind, and even if we succeed in producing, we will have no market for it. The only way out is research and development, and this is what we are focusing on.
Okay, we thank you so much for your time here on Energy Quick Chat, sir, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Omar. Thank you. Thank you, Okonkwo.
Dr. Omar Farouk Ibrahim, the Secretary General, African Petroleum Producers Organisation. I am Omono Okonkwo. See you next time on Energy Quick Chat, where we speak to leaders from the energy sector.